Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the She Sells Weed podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mindy, and I got my co-host here.
What's up, guys? Jax, hanging out with everybody.
Yeah, we're really excited to get into our episode. We have a really amazing guest with us today, Lauren from Embarc. Go
Welcome,
Embarc.
Lauren.
Lauren's the... Welcome. Thank you. Lauren's the CEO and co-founder of Embarc. Embarc is incredible what we've seen Embarc become and grow into. Embarc's one of the largest retail brands in California with many multiple stores. And, even in Sacramento, they held down the state fair, which is a crazy feat itself with the on-site consumption. So we're really excited to learn about Lauren's story, what they're doing, what Embarc has in store, and what we can learn from our special guests today.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you, Lauren. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with us in your very chaotic, busy lifestyle, So I guess, we always like to start off the show with kind of like who you are beyond cannabis and how did you grow up and where did you grow up? And just if you could give us your little background of who Lauren is.
Yeah. I don't know what that even means anymore outside of cannabis.
Right?
It's all consuming,
where did you grow up at? Where did you go to like high school kind of era?
So I grew up in Sacramento.
Oh, okay.
So that's, I think, a big part of why the California State Fair and having a store in Sacramento is so cool because that is literally home.
Yeah.
I grew up going to that state fair.
Yeah.
And so,
Sneaking around in the back, trying to smoke.
Yeah. Bringing me to it in a new way has been really fun and exciting. During one of the tours, actually, I told the regulators, and if it smells like weed, that's because right over there is where everybody has always smoked. Okay.
We were like, oh, what? Yeah.
Weed has been at the state fair for a long time before we got there. Okay.
Exactly.
Score dogs don't sell themselves.
Right.
But anyway, so I grew up in Sacramento. I moved here. I actually was born in the Bay Area, but moved here when I was 4. I have a younger sister that grew up here too. So it's, like I said, it's awesome to now be able.
Does she work in weed?
No, she does not.
Okay.
But she did work for us for a minute, which was fun and weird for both of us, but fun because we're a family business. I mean, my husband and I started it, so it's kind of fun to have her be part of it. But I don't know what my identity is outside of this anymore. I'm a mom.
Yeah.
I have a 1-year-old, which is awesome and crazy. And shout out to all the parents because I don't know how people do this. I was very overly confident. Like, oh, you can do this. You can have it all. You can't. Spoiler alert. It's really hard. But that's been a really awesome sort of addition. It's context for what we do all day long in work to have that.
Takes you away from all the hustle and bustle of work too. You got to switch from, hey, I'm a CEO, I'm doing all this stuff, to, okay, well, now I'm a mom and I have to take care of this baby.
Yeah, she is. Her new thing is to hold my iPhone, and then I call it scritchy scratch, which she goes like this though. So we're working to reduce that. I don't love the scritchy scratch on the phone. So clearly I've role modeled bad behavior, but we're working on it.
Did your family do anything in cannabis?
No.
Or smoke weed even?
My family, so I grew up, both my parents are lawyers by trade.
Oh, okay.
My mom ended up kind of early in my childhood, though, sort of shifting gears and working in nonprofits.
Oh, okay.
And so I really got to see, she really role modeled for me from a really young age what contributing to your community looks like and sort of the ways that you can do that systematically, right? Rather than just with like a one-time donation or something. She really has dedicated most of my life to being in service to various causes.
And I like that because I do think the difference in the cannabis industry versus other industries is that we are very community based.
Yeah.
I mean, a closed loop system, you literally have to work with other businesses and do B2B and do all the things. But just in general, the idea of everybody getting together and like smoking or learning, because you also had to learn from each other, because back then the information wasn't just out there in the public. So that's cool. It came from, for you, kind of seeing and being inspired by like community based type of things. And I do say that you guys do a lot of give backs to community, a lot of things that you do in store to kind of do donations and help people.
I think to that point, I think when we started Embarc, from the very beginning, it was 1% back to our communities forever. And I think as I sort of look at my life, it's clear that that was the impact of my mom and seeing the ways that she really prioritized that.
Yeah.
My dad growing up, like I said, he's a lawyer, but he pivoted into working in government affairs and ultimately is a lobbyist. And so you can kind of see this intersection, right? My mom was very community oriented and my dad was very focused on policy and politics. And so in terms of shaping how I got into cannabis, like it was literally at that intersection.
That makes a lot of sense as to why you kind of have this ability to do what you've done in your life at the fair and outside lands, is that you kind of were brought up around parents that kind of do that, it's just in a different way. Yours is more focused on cannabis, but that makes a lot of sense as to why you do this so well. You know what I mean? Because I like I said, like I asked you at the fair, like, how did you do this? And it's like, how did you even have the knowledge or the capacity? And it's like, I see now, like your parents kind of raised you in that kind of environment. And so it's interesting how things kind of just line up like in a way that you would never have known. That's why I always like to ask these stories of like, where do you come from and where did you start from? Because it really tells like who you are and how you grew up and what led you on the path that you're on. You know what I mean?
And I don't think people realize how much policy is involved in owning a cannabis license.
Yeah.
Like every month at least there's something that you have to do and make sure that things are moving forward, or something new that's coming up, like the on-site consumption, the lounges, all the stuff.
I think that, I grew up, my parents, like right and wrong was really big. This idea of justice was really big. I am very square. I've never even gotten a speeding ticket. So I am a rule follower. I'm a rule follower breaking federal law every day. So walk with me on that journey.
The duality, you're like fighting with yourself every day. Like, no.
Yeah.
How did your parents feel when you got into the cannabis industry? Were they supportive of it?
I'm really lucky. My family, my nuclear family in particular, we've always been very close. And so I think, they've always been supportive. My parents, I was working in government affairs for non-cannabis related work. And then post legalization, I realized I've always sort of seen my career as I'm a bridge builder. Like I explain policy to communities and I explain communities to policymakers because I think so often there's this really big disconnect between those two things. And so post legalization, I realized the public feels like this light switch has been flipped and this is now legal. Right. Yeah. But community by community, policy by policy, we're just getting started and no one knows how to talk to each other. Cannabis has been hiding for obvious reasons. It's been hiding in the shadows for a really long time. Yeah. And what does this process of bringing it into the light, what is that going to look like? And how do we do that in a way that makes sense and ultimately is successful? And I'll put an asterisk there because I don't think we've gotten to that point yet, but I think we've come a long way in terms of people having access and awareness of cannabis, right? And so I think, my parents, I sat them down and was like, hey, I think that this is kind of like this place in this space where I could go and be a bridge builder. And I was super fortunate that they were supportive. And then a couple years later, I came to them and was like, so now I'm going to quit my really well-paying job and, and it's going to just sort of do this thing with all of my husband's and my life savings and we'll see how it goes. And then that was right before a global pandemic hit. And I'm like, we're going to keep going. And they were supportive the whole time.
What were you doing before?
Well, pre-cannabis, I was working on policy for basically like every industry. Okay. I was just in Sacramento. So I've worked on restaurant issues, energy issues, education, like you name it, I've worked on it. And then when I transitioned into cannabis in early 2018, so basically right with legalization, I went into MedMen and I started as their California political director.
Oh my gosh.
Which was wild. And then after a couple of months, I became the director of government affairs for the Western United States, which was cool because in California, there still in a lot of cities isn't a way to transfer licenses, but MedMen was going out and conquering, right? And getting these licenses.
They came in very strong.
Very strong. We came in hot.
Very hot.
But again, like in communities and with governments that had no process for any of that to happen.
Yeah.
And so my job was to sort of go community by community and talk with, the elected leaders and city officials and try and create mechanisms for license transfer. But then also by my role shifting to be for the Western US, I also got to go to Arizona and work on a ballot measure. And right. Like it was fun to work on legalization in different places that were in totally different points in time in that legalization process.
Right.
But also I knew when it was time to move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you come from working in that respective field and then also growing a family-owned business that has done what MedMen and those big corporations wanted to do, but did not succeed from it. And then you were able to do it with, your own family, your husband. What do you think in that process kind of made you be able to do that? Like, how did you succeed when all these other bigger, well-funded companies fail? And what did that look like when you were first getting into it? Because it's like, it's really nerve-wracking to put everything into a basket.
Oh my gosh. Well, I hope that we one day succeed, right? I mean, I think that we're all on this journey and every day is different. But I think in a lot of ways, when I was at MedMen, one of the things I worked on was developing a corporate social responsibility program. And so this was early days, right, in retail. And so I spent about a year working to build a coalition with a lot of folks who, and as retailers, we have this experience a lot of folks who slammed the door in my face initially, right? Either, because of cannabis or MedMen or whatever. And so, I spent a year.
Yeah, because MedMen got a lot of hate. I mean, from the gate, they got a lot of, we don't want this, we don't like it, so I'm sure that kind of followed you a little bit.
They took a very specific approach.
Yes.
And, I'll say a couple of things. First, I am really lucky because I think to your question around, what has helped me with Embarc, I think that in a lot of ways you learn more from failures than successes.
100%.
And so Embarc was able to benefit from the fact that I had worked at 2 cannabis retailers before starting Embarc. And, I'm trying to say this delicately, but, and I was able to see the things that I perhaps wanted to do differently.
Yeah.
One of the biggest lessons I took from MedMen was, at that time, well, actually, let me say that differently. One of the biggest lessons I took from my pre-Embarc career was I didn't want to be a mile wide and an inch deep, right? I didn't want cultivation in desert hot springs. And, I wanted to just focus on retail because, by the way, we're good at it. We aren't great at it yet. Right. Yeah. That's a journey. That is an ongoing process.
So many
there
more
are
things
so
to
many things we
learn.
need to tighten up. Right. Yeah. And so if I was trying to be good or great, even right, in cultivation and manufacturing and distribution, then I would be shitty at all of them. Mm-hmm. So I think, I am fortunate to have taken lessons from that. I think a lot of folks can be grateful to MedMen for being the tip of the spear on things. When we think about January 1, 2018, you couldn't drive a mile in LA without a MedMen billboard or, they'd wheat pasted everywhere. And it was this campaign around normalizing, right? It was these pictures of normal people and it said stoner and it was crossed out and it was then underneath it would be like firefighter or mom or whatever that person was, right? Beyond their cannabis consumption. Yeah. And so in that way, in those ways, both a lot of lessons learned, but also I think being that tip of the spear in telling the story differently and kind of coming out of the shadows, I think that was helpful. But back to this CSR thing, I spent about a year building this whole corporate social responsibility program for them. I thought that was really important as MedMen was acquiring these licenses, that we not lose sight of the community integration and work that those licensees had been doing for a really long time under the sort of pre-Prop 64 dynamic. And then unfortunately, when it came time to move forward with that program, there were other priorities at that time. And so that was when I knew it was probably time for me to move on because I'd spent a year building this coalition of folks who were willing to sort of put their necks out.
You want a job that gives you purpose also. And so you're doing something and then it's just not going to come into life. You're like, well,
That sucks.
Yeah.
I worked really hard on
Like,
that.
wow, okay, at least I was being paid for it, I guess, because otherwise, like,
Cool. So sorry, everyone who I've spent a year working with.
that's not going to happen now.
And also, like, it's your reputation too. 'Cause
Exactly.
You're the one out there talking to people. So if you don't deliver what you're gonna say, then they're gonna be like, "Well, Lauren."
Yes.
Yes.
Because
What is
ultimately,
going on over here?
I don't get to sign those checks,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that was a huge organization. I think I was employee number 680 or something. By the time I left a year later, it was like 1,200 and something, right? It was
Holy
massive growth. But those were really, really important lessons. And so I think to your point, I had mentioned from the beginning, we build a community advisory board in every community where we operate. We empower them with 1% of our gross receipts forever. And so you can see, right, there's that through line between that initial sort of community work that I had done and the frustration at it not coming to life.
So you're still able to take what you build and then just apply it.
Yeah, in this new way.
in your own thing. I'm just doing it myself.
Because I signed the checks this time. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
We're doing this.
yeah, right. Well, and Mindy's mentioned so many times about people getting retail licenses that have never worked in retail and how that's really bad. It's really bad for the industry. It's bad for business overall. And you're a clear point to that, because of that experience, you kind of came in to build Embarc in a specific way from all that failure with MedMen, and I think that makes a big difference. So it's like, if you're going to work in cannabis retail, like, you should probably at least go work in it before you decide to go get a license in it, because there are a lot of challenges that you cannot foresee, like, it's not traditional retail like we were talking about earlier. It's not the same game. It's a very different game to play. So
I think it's hard. There is still that sense of this as a golden ticket. And, I try and be mindful of how I speak about this because, we have 17 stores and I recognize that someone absent context is going to look at me and just completely roll their eyes, right? And be like, well, you have 17 golden tickets. So it's easy for you to say, right, that it isn't a golden ticket. And I am sensitive to that frustration or that the potential for that perception. But I think to your point, someone getting a license with no experience, with no capital, absent these other things, that is just debt.
yeah.
You've just handed them debt, right? And so I think that
can be a curse as
Can be a curse.
much as it can be a blessing
100%.
if you don't know how to do it correctly.
Yeah.
for sure.
And I see it a lot with women too, right? I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, but like what percentage of women-owned businesses get funded in any meaningful way,
Very small
right? And
amount.
so you end up spending your life savings, and sometimes it works, and that's incredible. But I do just think we have to sort of share these stories of the challenges and maybe not even always frame them as challenges, but just of like what it actually takes,
Yep.
so that people can make that informed decision.
Yeah. Well, that's why I really was excited to have you on the show in the beginning is that I feel like you're a good person to kind of share that with the world and our listeners because of what we just talked about, it's like, there's not a lot of people that I can think of outside of like Mindy and their kind of group that really highlights women owners and like they're being successful and working together. And it's not just a bootstrap type situation. It's like there's a whole team that goes with it and a whole ecosystem that's involved in it, So, and you got to know that ecosystem before you go jumping in it. So, what do you think, like, what do you think has changed for you in the stores from like day one, first Embarc, what was the first Embarc?
South Lake Tahoe.
South Lake Tahoe, the little one up there. It's on Main Street. That store tripped me out. The first time I walked in there, I was like, why?
Because you could shop.
Yeah, I was like, why? I was like, don't you guys like have to deal with people like running out of this place? And like the security guards are like, oh, we love that. And I'm
They're like, hold my deer.
yeah, I got something to do today. Yeah. And I was just like, that was crazy, And how did you wind up getting a dispensary right there? I mean, across the street from Heavenly, like.
Yeah, it's a journey. That's been a journey. So, I mean, very long story short, as I had mentioned, before I started working in cannabis, I worked in government affairs and public affairs in Sacramento. And I worked for a woman for many years. She is my professional mentor. And she lives in South Lake Tahoe with her family. And so she kind of commutes down to Sacramento each week to spend a couple of days, right, working in politics. And then she hightails it out of there to get back to her life and the sanity that is that space in the mountains. And so, so this sort of came to be really organically, in that as South Lake Tahoe was moving forward with the licensing process, she applied for a license. South Lake was one of the first communities to move forward post legalization with a new licensing process. And so from her perspective, you know, she's worked in and around government for forever. I don't want to say how long, because she'll be like, oh my God, you made me sound old, right? But like for a very long time, right?
She knows
and so she knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
But she's also a mom. Like she knows her community, and she knew that there were going to be some concerns there. Cody and Tahoe Wellness has been there for a really long time. So I think that that's generally destigmatized, I think, within the community, right? Because cannabis had been open and the sky didn't fall. But again, like they were one of the first cities to move forward with the licensing process. And so I think there's always some discomfort there, because cities are having to figure out how to do this thing that they've never done before.
Yeah.
So she went through the licensing process. She was one of the 4 or 3, whatever, operators that were selected. I was at the time living in LA working for other cannabis companies, right? I think at that time I had left MedMen and I was working for a cannabis retail startup. And I kind of, independent of that, I hit a wall of like, I need to get back home. I lived in LA for a couple years. I needed to get out of LA. I'm not an LA person.
I was actually going to ask if you had to move there to work at MedMan.
Yes. Yeah. And I realized very quickly, I'm so happy for all of you that love LA. I am not one of you. That is not me. Get me to like air and get me out of a car. And so I kind of hit this wall of, I was not happy. And I had this realization that I had to move home. So I had called my parents and said, I think I'm having a quarter life crisis. Like, I think I have to quit my job and just move home.
Yeah.
Because I had also just gotten married before I moved to LA, but then I got this really cool job offer. So I said to my husband, whose job was in Sacramento, like, I think I'm going to take this job. And he's like, cool, we'll figure it out. And like all split time between LA and Sacramento.
That's hard.
And then he also was working, he actually worked he was with the Senate in Mexico as Mexico was working toward legalization. So he's living half time in Sacramento, half time in Mexico City. I'm in LA. So obviously my quarter life crisis ensues.
Yeah.
So I move home and I'm like, I am going to not work for 60 days. Like, I need a cleanse. I'd worked for like 2 dudes in a row that were super duty, you know? I'm like, I just needed a cleanse.
Yeah, a break.
And then like 5 days later, my mentor calls me and she's like, hey kid, I'm the Hotel California. You can never leave. I told you that when you quit, when I had gone to her to quit to move to LA, I was like, it's not you, it's me. Like, this just really cool opportunity. And she had said to me at the time, I'm Hotel California. You can never leave, babe.
Yeah.
So she calls me and she's like, I told you, you gotta come back. Right. And I'm like, shit, I just started this quarter life crisis. I was settling into not doing anything. But then the rest is history. Like, so easy to, I'd worked with her for so long. It was so easy to sort of, just come right back together. And then I think, certainly at that time, like the idea of one store that was ours, that wasn't someone else's, was mind blowing. I never in a million years did I think I'd be sitting here 7 years after that conversation, 6.5 years later, and be, and have more than one.
Yeah.
But we just knew there was this opportunity. I was fresh off working for these 2 other places, and we looked at that location, to your point, like basically across the street from Heavenly,
literally,
right?
Yeah.
You can spit and hit the fire pit.
Don't do that, folks.
Yeah, please don't. I'm not looking for that phone call in a couple weeks. All of a sudden, people are spitting on our fire pit. All these stoners are spitting. Like you had dry mouth. Anyway, but we were looking at it. We're like, people are coming here from all over the state, all over the world.
All over the world, yeah.
And so we just sort of felt like there was this opportunity to use this storefront to destigmatize.
Yeah, it's a big tourist.
It's a huge tourist community. And so to your point around, like, you walked in and you could shop.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And what she means by that, folks, just so we're clear, because normally when you go to a dispensary, everything's behind a counter. You kind of have to deal with the bud tender. This is a different environment where it's literally the product's out on the store floor. You can pick it up, you can check it out, you can look at it. It's like just like being in a regular store. Yeah, a bodega. Yeah, so like a convenience shop. It's very similar to that, and it was a very weird feeling for me going into that, because I was like, well, I can touch this stuff and nobody's gonna like attack me. And they're like, no, go ahead. It was just a very unique experience. So yeah, like anyways, back to what you were saying.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we wanted to provide everyone. And fortunately, every city has different regulatory requirements.
Of course.
And fortunately, that community was one where we could keep a limited amount of product on the storefront, on the sales floor. And so we just knew, like, this is an opportunity to have conversations.
Yeah.
And 5.5 years later now, it still is. Like, every time I'm in there, there's still someone who's just walked down from the casinos. They've never been in a shop before. They have all of these questions. And so being able to, compare different products and look at the packaging is part of that sensory experience. And I think part of that educational experience. We ended up opening in June of 2020.
Okay.
Really a wild time to be opening a cannabis business.
Right.
Especially on the border of two states with very different perspectives on shelter in place and mask mandates. Right. And so, in a lot of ways, I feel like we were kind of the front lines of that. And so that got a little weird around like touchable products.
Right.
But as we've moved out of that, I think it's been really cool to see people from foreign countries saying, I am going to go home and talk to my community about this. I didn't realize that this is not scary.
Yeah. That's a big impact to have, and it's so funny because during the pandemic, there was a lot of challenges, but it's like weed was the one business that actually was thriving in that time versus a lot of people were having a really hard time. So it was definitely a weird time to be, because cannabis is never going to go back to that, which is really unfortunate, because so many people are like, we wish it was 2021 again a little bit. I mean, just because of the way things were going, but obviously that was not good for the world either, but
I think it helped, like, mentally, people's mental states. It's stressful.
It definitely changed society.
Yeah. And I do think, as we move forward and we're in a recession and different things like that, I do really want to encourage people just to focus on your health and what you're doing. And, instead of buying the newest, latest thing, which you probably won't be able to afford. And
you don't need an iPhone 17.
Go and
you don't need it.
de-stress and smoke some weed and find out what that's about. Because I think it really did, although, that was a really stressful time. Cannabis really helped a lot of people during the COVID. And I saw the difference in, when you're just don't know what to do, you're at the end. And, I think that goes for a lot of different things. New motherhood, being a mom, the stress of that, being a business owner, doing all these things that are just, life is intense sometimes.
And I use a lot of those stories with local government, right? So a big part of what I do is I go to communities that have never allowed for legal cannabis businesses. I mean, we all know cannabis is in those communities, right?
Yeah.
But it isn't there legally.
Right.
And, and I really open up that dialogue with folks who are afraid. So that's with elected leaders, that's with city officials, that's with pastors and PTA moms and everyone in between. I always say, by the time we open a store, I've had 400 cups of coffee over meetings with folks, most of whom started as really concerned. I meet with our team tries to meet with the police chief or the former police. Like we really try and bridge a lot of divides to have that conversation and to get to a place where, legal cannabis is ultimately, allowed in a community. And I rely on a lot of those stories and those anecdotes in those conversations. I so clearly remember during the height of the pandemic in South Lake Tahoe, and this guy would stop in after work every day and he would get one cannabis beverage. And so, after a couple weeks, you start talking about this pattern with him, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, look, I used to go to the bar and I used to basically drink myself silly until, midnight. And then I'd stumble home and I'd go and do the same thing the next day, right? And so in a way, we had become, and I'm going to sound so old saying this, we had become his Cheers. Like we were the new place, like that bar had felt like home. And then the store became that place that felt like home. And so to see this person changing from, from my perspective, this very destructive relationship with alcohol to coming in, grabbing one beverage, his little 10 milligram beverage, going home. That was it for the day, right?
Yeah.
That's it, folks.
Yeah.
And so I think in a lot of ways he got his life back.
Change.
I agree. Cannabis provides a lot of life to people. Like it really does. Like it's incredible the impact it has on people's lives. Now, I know some people have had negative experiences with cannabis. I think you can with anything, but the the power of the positivity that comes through it, and I think that's also like traces back to like the love of the compassion of cannabis, because it wasn't always recreational. It really is medicinal, and I know we have it labeled as a recreational thing, but I feel like it is a very medicinal plant that can open up mental doorways for people and to provide, you know, sometimes you do need to numb out, and alcohol is typically the thing people reach for, you know, and cannabis is such a better option for that because it keeps you yourself. You know, you don't lose yourself. Alcohol, you lose yourself. You become something dark, and it's not good, and it's beautiful to see people like that, you know, kind of step into the light and start living a better, more positive life. You know,
the stories, I think anybody who works in this industry, like me starting as a bud tender and doing bud tending, that's why I stayed. It's like, wow, the things that people will tell me and what is going on with their lives and how their lives have changed. Like, there's no way I can do anything else in my life. Like, this is pretty much it. And, you know, their story about opening that store, it's interesting because you had referenced earlier, like, oh, people think it's a golden ticket, but they only see that part where it's that initial, okay, application's open. They don't really see the years of work leading up to that application being open. Yeah. So it's just, you know, it's a different strategy. And it's so funny because you just meet random people all day, right? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I own a dispensary. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to own one too, or whatever. And I'm like, you know, in other industries, mine is like a coffee shop. You want a coffee shop? It's so easy. Just, all right, I'm going to pop one open. I'm like, no. It doesn't really work like that. Good luck.
Best of luck.
Good luck to you.
Call me when you want to cry.
But it doesn't really work like that. But there is so much, and the journey really does have to start at that beginning point. And in different places, we really do need access. And it came down to advocating for access, because in very, you know, cities, Sacramento, different places, very easy to find cannabis. Other cities where people need that help medicinally, mentally, they don't have it. Yeah. And so the work starts with going to city council meetings, showing up, advocating, telling the stories. That's why the testimonials are really important of these people that have had these things happen to them. And many people just spend so much of their life advocating, and sometimes it reaps rewards, and sometimes it's just for the benefit of
the greater good,
you know, the greater good. So shout out to all the advocates out there that do this all the time, because it's not an easy thing that wears on you too, because you'll go and then the whole people will change. You're like, all right, cool.
I've spent 4 years educating you. We were so close. What do you mean you're not running for re-election?
I gotta, you know.
Back to square one. It's like Candyland or Chutes and Ladders. We're shooting laddering right back down, right?
Yes.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work. And I think it's, you know, and then you layer on at the state level, right?
Yep.
So there's all the state level advocacy. There's the advocacy in each of our communities.
So, but we did win. There was a win recently.
Yeah, it is.
Where, you know, we went to different meetings for the state. You know, we sent letters. So many people got involved, and they did raise the tax 4% to 19. And October 1st, it is going back down to 15. And that's a huge win for us, because it's very rare that they're going to take something down. But that's how much people recognize that it was really important to not overtax our industry. And that's part of the fight, not even the advocacy on destigmatizing, but now how are we building a sustainable industry to where we're going to be able to continue doing this for years on end and continue to help people. And you're kind of playing both sides at the same time and having to do double work.
I think, you know, I'm a big... If anyone on my team is watching this, they're going to roll their eyes, because I think the sentence I probably say the most is 2 things can be true at the same time. I live by that motto, right? And so I think this is a classic 2 things can be true at the same time. We have to celebrate this win. And the reason for that from my perspective is because this has been really mischaracterized. I've heard people say, you know, this is a tax break on marijuana millionaires. This is a tax break for retailers. Well, you're a retailer, so that's why you're excited about this. This is a consumer tax. This is a tax that the people who walk through our doors every day are paying. And that is 100%. Everyday Californians.
Yeah, I get customers that come in and they're like, hey, I heard you guys are getting taxed more. And I'm like, oh, I like laugh a little bit. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. We just pay the taxes, but you got taxed more. And they're like, wait, what do you mean? I'm like, we don't pay any tax like the way you think. All the tax is paid by you, so you're having to pay 4 more percent on a product that you were buying a month ago for 4% less. And unfortunately, us retailers, we can't increase our margins. Like, our margins are already kind of there. Like, most people don't realize in cannabis, it's like a good margin is like a 60% margin. Like, that is like, wow. Like,
that's an incredible.
That's an like the fact that you found a product that you can get a margin on there, and the brand's not calling you up being like, hey, you're selling my product for too much. That's a big deal. Not including all the discounts that we have to do. That a lot of, like, if you run a senior discount or a veteran discount, like, that's just straight off our margin. We're not getting any money back. Well,
and then someone opens down the street from you with an 80% off every day, right? So
I think all of us
no comment,
in this room, we won't mention brands, but yes, there are certain stores that are not playing fair, you know, and that's, I guess, the best way we could say that, because they're devaluing brands and they're devaluing the entire system, the ecosystem. They're devaluing it. And that's what I tell people when they come in and they're like, well, how come you're not selling it for this price? And I'm like, well, this is the actual price of that product. Like, it's not
because I pay my employees.
It's a $60 rate.
Right.
Yeah. You know, like,
I pay my employees, I pay my vendors.
Yeah.
I also stand on
your
this.
Vendors.
The Pocket Dispensary, Embarc, and the Delta Boys do not sell boof.
No. No.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, we don't. We don't sell old
We
products.
don't do sales like that. It's not super crazy.
And since we're talking about this really quick, I want to have you talk a little bit about your guys' reward program, because that is a really unique reward program. And looking at it, you know, I mean, there's things on there like ride in a fighter plane. There's all sorts of stuff.
For an hour.
For only an hour. I'll take an hour.
Only an hour in a fighter jet. I don't know how much time you need in a fighter jet. Like,
but how are you getting that accomplished?
Magic.
Yeah, clearly magic, because it's crazy what you guys are offering on there.
Thank you.
It's not just discounts. It's like
it's trying to change the conversation, right? And so we all want to be fair. We all want to be fairly priced. And also, we are not all approaching that the same way.
Correct.
Right? And so I think that we were really looking for, how do we all have daily discounts. We all, you know, the items of the week, all the things, right? I just like, when I think of dispensaries right now, I just think of these, like, it's like in Vegas when you're walking down the street and everything's flashing at you and you're completely overstimulated, right? We are all overstimulated with deals, right? And so I think we were looking for, there is that customer, that Weed Maps customer, that is only searching by deals, right?
Correct,
and so we obviously endeavor to have the deals and things that they want. But from my perspective, that's not loyalty. It's the opposite of loyalty, right? And so we really, really, really started to hone in on who and what do we want to be amidst a sea of cannabis retailers and we are all selling most of the same products, right? And so, like, our menu, I mean, there is some differentiation in menu, and there's the way to be differentiated a bit from your menu. Your menu can have a POV, but ultimately we're all sort of doing the same thing, right? And so for us, we really looked to our loyalty program to my question around what do we want to be. We realized we wanted to be an experiences company. What I mean by that is cannabis facilitates experiences. Whether that's a wellness experience, a relaxation experience, whatever that is, cannabis is sort of the gateway to that for you. And different cannabis can open up different doors for you.
Right, yeah.
And so in much the same way, that's what we wanted our loyalty program to be able to provide. And so, yes, you know, you can use your points to get cheaper weed. You can absolutely do that. Yeah. But you can also use your points to do really fucking cool stuff.
Yeah.
Like ride in a fighter jet and get tickets to concerts and to festivals and to sold out shows and to get limited edition merch from brands and things that you wouldn't otherwise have access to.
So you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but are you guys paying for that?
Sometimes.
Really?
Sometimes.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it is a full-blown this is a whole program to manage. Like, this is not a set it and forget it type of a thing. This is constant iteration. As folks redeem their points, it's like the coordination of getting them the tickets in their name, and right. So it's a super hands-on. Well, but I have a whole team of like one person who does it every night and all weekend.
Shout out that one person.
Shout out Courtney.
She's your marketing person, right?
Yeah.
Very cool lady.
I literally called Courtney like 7 years ago, and she didn't even really know me. I knew her work. I'd worked tangentially with her, and I'm like, hey, can you meet me for coffee? And it was like right during the pandemic. So we met in a parking lot of a Starbucks, and I was like, hey, I have like no money to pay you, but do you think that you could come work? Could you come work with Embarc? And naturally she was like, yeah, totally. That seems great, because in cannabis, that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
We do. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's
do
go.
it. Yeah.
And so this is, in a lot of ways, this has been her brainchild, right? I mean, I think we do a lot of events and experience-based work. Like, that's a place where our company puts a lot of energy. And so in a lot of ways, this is a continuation of that. But like, we did not get the fighter jet donated by the fighter jet company. And that's just going to be
So that was just the craziest thing I saw.
That's me writing a check.
Okay. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's very cool that you guys are able to do that for your customer base that are loyal. And it's like, we don't want you here for a short time. We want you here for a long time.
And like, you're going, from my perspective, we are all offered the gimmicks and the punch card, from your sandwich shop and your coffee shop. Like, all of that exists, and we're not reinventing the wheel, all of us that are utilizing those best practices. Correct. But I think that for us, like, how do we create loyalty to one another? We just thought giving people unforgettable experiences, like you think about cool. Like you and your significant other go to some show and it was like the best night of your life, That's what we want. We want people to associate those experiences with cannabis and with Embarc.
Yeah, I love your marketing, the way that it rolls out, the different launches, the bags,
it's all crazy.
Yeah, no,
it's hard as hell. It is hard as hell, the market in cannabis, y'all.
No, you guys are doing my favorite, honestly. Like I told you earlier, like I read Courtney's posts on LinkedIn all the time because there's so much insight. She gives really knowledge away for free if you read them. And
sometimes I'm like, hey, could you delete that one? Let's give us like 3 weeks of being the only ones doing this before everyone else does it.
Starts to do it. Yeah, right. But I think you get such a better experience as a customer when you're loyal to a dispensary. I think that overall it becomes a really fun thing because you get to know the staff, they get to know you, and it gives it that coffee shop vibe. I mean, we've mentioned coffee shops a lot, but it's like when you walk in and they're like, hey, Carol, how's your day? How did your weekend go? Did your kid's soccer game go well? And it just makes such a better experience than just shopping for a deal. And it also makes you realize like your dollar's going to something and it's not just going to some dude's bank account that they don't care about you. I think running a store where the focus is that we do care about you is such a better experience for the customers. So, I know we charge a little bit more, but I think you're going to get such a better experience out of spending your dollar there than going to the discount stores.
So I did a little secret shopping. Me and my friends did that.
I love doing that. I hate it when they recognize
one of those stores.
The internet, the people were like, "Hey, you're the Delta Voice girl." I'm like, "No, I'm not.
That's
today.
not me." So you're gonna work on your disguises.
Yeah. They're like, "You want me to go get the manager?" I'm like, "No."
Put on your wig.
I send my bud tenders in now. Yeah.
So you've smartened up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I send my bud tenders in. I said, "Here's $50. Go shop. Go hang out."
So it's an experience for some people. I can see why some people like it, but it was literally we were waiting in line for 30 minutes.
Yep.
It was one of those just zigzag. Like you felt like you're like waiting in line for the DMV almost. Like
Nah, number.
Like that. Yeah. And so, and it's, I understand. I get it. And some people, really need that. But it is, like we were saying, like the personability of going to the store and talking to somebody and like finding the right product because there's so many different products. And when you know somebody and you can talk to them about, oh yeah, you came in last week and this one worked for you, this one didn't work for you. So, if you're out there, don't be afraid to talk to your bud tenders because they will be able to help you figure out, okay, based on this and this and this, and there's a good recommendation for you. Strains change so much that it can become really overwhelming.
Yeah.
You're like, I really liked that one last time, but like, how do I have that same feeling or same effect? And, there's
I
really
agree.
knowledgeable people that are at the store that can help.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back, folks, and just stay tuned. All right. We're going to take a quick moment to shout out our amazing sponsors who help us keep the show rolling. Big thank you to Delta Boys Dispensary and Smoking Lounge, located at 66 Main Street, Ileton, California, and the Pocket Dispensary, holding it down at 1195 Florin Road, Sacramento, California. Both spots are open 7 days a week, serving up the top-tier products, unbeatable prices, and that next-level customer service. Plus, you're always going to see those friendly faces that always make you feel right at home. Now let's get back to the show. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. So we're going to continue the show with Lauren here. And Lauren, I think I want to move into what you do as far as like how you got to do the state fair. I know it's a big story, but I want to hear just how you were able to push that issue, as well as you've done outside lands. Mm-hmm. Are you also doing Coachella?
We've done, so Coachella doesn't allow for cannabis sales, at least not yet.
Okay.
It's sort of just ancillary. There's a lot of like pop-ups and activations around Coachella.
I see. Okay.
But yeah, we've done, I think 5 or 6, we've done many years now of outside lands. We've done Cali Roots in Monterey.
That's the other one. Yeah,
You guys were the first ones to do these things, correct?
Yeah, there was actually, when it comes to outside lands, there was 1 year sort of that predated us. And then we kind of came in and joined the team. Mm-hmm. So shout out to all of the folks that sort of paved the way there. But I think, just like I was saying, cannabis is in communities, even if we don't allow legal access to that cannabis. Obviously, the same is true of music festivals and events, right? Like, we all know cannabis is there. Mm-hmm. Everybody has been partaking. And I think in a lot of ways, we're all seeing this data that the younger generations are actually looking for. Like, when I think about a 3-day music festival, my ripe age of 35, like, I cannot hang the way that I could at 25. Like, I'm not trying to drink for 3 days straight. Like, I paid too much money for these tickets to like try and, rally for the next 2 days. And so I think we're really seeing this warm reception for cannabis. The Dead & Co. had a 3-day show in San Francisco this year. Yeah. And so we were able to integrate sales and consumption into that event.
Hell yeah. That's hella cool.
It does make it a different experience.
It's an entirely different.
Feel the music versus
yes.
just hearing the music.
And with the Dead & Co. event, what was really cool about that show is, there are a lot of fans that have been fans for decades,
literally.
There are literal like multi-generational situations there now, right? And so they've embraced cannabis for a really long time at those shows. But this was the first time that they could purchase it legally. And there was something the sort of acceptance of that, the destigmatization of that, I think was such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I think the state fair, to your point, like talking about destigmatization, there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that attend the fair every year. The fair is and has been for almost 2 centuries a celebration of cannabis agriculture. I know a lot of people think of fairs and they think of rides and corn dogs, and those are great, but sort of coming back to the beating heart of the fair, it is agriculture. It's ag, right? Especially in a state like California that feeds so much of the country, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for the state fair to have created this recognition of cannabis as agriculture, I think that, like, I cannot thank them enough for what I think that does for our industry.
It really shows how it can work well. And one of the big things when it comes to events, even with cannabis, is the inclusion of alcohol. Mm-hmm. So they're like, okay, it has to be completely separate, which it was, but it was also in the same space and it was fine. So you walk out of the cannabis area and then there's plenty of places to get a drink, to get wine, to get all your stuff. And then you would walk into the cannabis area, go get your smoke. And it was essentially in the same environment and it was fine. Like,
I think
let people do what they want to do instead of having these hard nose. And it's a lot around fear. What's going to happen? What's going to happen when you have these 2 things in the same place? What's going to happen when people are smoking? And it all proved that everything's fine. nothing. Nothing horrible happened. Like, yeah, there's people, you might have incident, but that's just a natural
People are people.
part of it. People are people. But for the majority, like, absolutely nothing. Like, you have nothing to worry about.
I love it because, like, I'm a big ag person. We've talked about I was previously a cultivator, so I actually love agriculture as a whole. Like, I have pear farmers that come into the store, and I geek out with them about pears. Like, I love pears, but I like it because you're highlighting a brand new agricultural crop that California, I feel like, was the only state that I'm aware of that made it an official agricultural crop versus it just being like a recreational crop, right? And getting to highlight that to people, to show them, like, when do we get a new agricultural crop? That never happens, right? There's not that many things that are going to be added to an agricultural listing. And now we have cannabis that's doing that. And how cool is that we get to share this new crop with the world that most people have never seen a weed garden. Most people, I mean, I watch people stand in front of those plants in awe. Like, they're real plants here,
And they're dancing because we put little fans so the girls were dancing in the wind.
And
even though there's no wind in Sacramento, we have to fake it. Fake it till you make it.
I thought you guys were doing it to keep them from dying in that window. Yeah, like, I was like, that's smart.
Because I'm sure a little dancing,
yeah,
in the
little
wind,
movement,
a reminder that this is a living, breathing plant. And I think,
is it true that they're hemp plants? Somebody out. Okay. I heard
the
male
regulations were a bitch and a half to navigate.
Okay.
But I think the goal was to connect people from the beginning, right? You walk into maybe I should pass since I'm about to talk for the next 5 minutes. Right? You walk in and you're immediately connected with, before even the history walls, before the products and the award winners, you're connected with this plant right there, right? It's this grounding moment that, like, everything you're going to experience for the next however long is this plant. The stigma, the fear, right? As we take you through the history, the politicization of this, right? All of that, all of this drama is over a plant.
This plant,
This little dancing plant.
And I love that you had the clones there.
It's a beautiful girl.
Favorite part, seeing people like with their clones, they got to take them home and then grow their own plant at home. That was
As a retailer, that was so kind of putting. We sit in two seats. We are the retailer at the fair, but we are also part of the team that produces that entire event.
Right, puts it on.
And so putting the retailer hat on for a second, I thought it was really important to have clones. I think it was important from a storytelling perspective for fair attendees. Again, rooting them, reminding them always with seeds, with clones, that this is a plant, right? But as a retailer, I think that's really important. We have to continue in whatever ways to advocate for the ability to grow at home. And so from my perspective, that was like a really clear signal of, support for home grow.
You guys had really, dollar seeds? That was pretty
Penny seeds.
Penny seeds. I heard they went very fast.
The largest compliant seed giveaway ever. Jumping through those hoops. But you do what you got to do. And yes, so many people came in for seeds. And I think that was really helpful. We have regulators on site all day, every day for all 17 days of the fair, plus setup and tear down.
Right.
And so I also think it's really important, just as it's grounding for us, to be in our stores, to be in the work. It's this reminder of what we do. I think that's really important for our regulators too, who are working every single day to regulate our industry. And, God willing, it's to regulate our industry in a way that allows for us to continue and to innovate and evolve. And so I think it's really important for them to see folks coming in and buying seeds and buying clones and taking that home, because it's this reminder that, this is not just a consumption experience for people. It's really also like that process of cultivating, right? Like all of that is very experiential too. And I think part of that, like a more holistic wellness journey.
I agree. Yeah. Being able to grow your own medicine in your backyard. And that's why I always tell people, you don't have to grow this top shelf flower that you see in a magazine to get medicine. You can get medicine out of weed that doesn't look that great. It's just the way you post process it. Maybe you're not drying it for the flower, you're drying it to make RSO oil or a topical or something. And so at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how it looks or how it dries. It just is important that you have the medicine there, and to do that in your own backyard. I've always been a big advocate for grow your own, because I teach people till this day, you know, answer questions. I have a TikTok that I run that I answer questions about weed for people. And I tell people about growing your own all the time because people are like, oh, the clubs suck or this sucks. And I'm like, then just grow your own. Like there's so many resources online nowadays to learn how to grow. Like you can do it in a tiny little 2x2 box and have enough to produce your own medicine in your own house in a very small contained environment. And people think, oh, well, that's not enough. And it's like, you'd be surprised after the third cycle of that, how much you actually have left, you know, especially because you get better and you can maximize that tiny little space and really produce your own. And as much as I want you to come shop here because I'm a retailer, but I also understand that this is medicine. And if it's better for you to grow it on your own, then please do that because I want you to be healthy and not be suffering. And that's the biggest core thing for me. So I appreciate you putting the plant on highlight like that and giving those seeds out to people. Because I had customers come in here. They were like, I got those penny seeds, you know? They're like, did you get some?
Stoned.
And I'm like, no, I didn't. But I was like, but I'm glad you
Next
did.
year,
You know?
And save them up.
I have too many seeds already.
It's like, I remember like a couple years ago, I planted tomatoes and eggplants and stuff, right? And I was so proud of my not very well executed garden, right? Because even that, in and of like the process of gardening, I think is therapeutic in and of itself.
Oh, it is.
Sort of irrespective of the outcome.
Like they say for ADHD people that it's the best therapy thing they can do over medicine, over.
Wow. I didn't know that. I need to start gardening more.
It makes you focus and you get this like reward. It's something that connects all the sensories because you kind of have to be thinking, you're kind of physical, like you can't just willy-nilly it, and then you got to care for it on a regular basis. So it teaches you to be consistent.
Yeah.
And as an ADHD person, that's a really hard thing, but it teaches you consistency that then you can apply that to the rest of your life. You're like, well, I knew I was consistent with that tomato plant, you know, and I got really great tomatoes. Like, what if I'm consistent in this other aspect of my life? You know, how can that make me better? And weed taught me that. We talked about this with Lindsay is that weed taught me how to be a better person for myself. It taught me to care for myself better. It taught me to treat the world better. Like weed taught me a lot about myself and just how to be a better person. So no, I tell everybody to grow a weed plant. It'll be the coolest thing for you.
I love that idea of like what weed taught me. I think there's something really powerful in that. Like that's, and you know, you were saying it's weird that we call this recreational now. I think we can all probably say this, like in our shop, I always say it's like, it's all wellness. It's just a wellness spectrum. And I love, you know, I think that there was this reporter one time, he called me, he was doing this like awful gotcha story about cannabis in one of the communities where we operate. And it wasn't about us. It was just like, you know, cannabis is bad generally, right? Like, if you've read one, you've read them all, right? And so he like calls me on a 4th of July, I think, cause he knows I'm like not going to, you know, I'm like probably not sitting at my computer. Well, joke's on him, but I'm a cannabis entrepreneur. So I'm like, great, like you're 3 hours away. Like I can meet you there now. I can meet you at the shop tomorrow at 8 a.m. Like whatever. So we meet the next day. So July 5th, we meet at the shop. And it's so funny, right? Because I'm like, hey, let's just stand here before we talk. Like, let's just stand here for a few minutes. Yeah. And it was so awesome. You know, I don't think his heart changed, but it was so awesome sort of watching him watch who was coming through the doors. And, you know, it in some ways is like the perfect cliche way of pushing back. And in some ways, the opposite. You know what I mean is like it's the older woman who's coming in with the cream for her arthritis, you know, those things that we always point to. And also it was like this old guy came in, he was kind of like hobbling in and he's like, hey, like I'm looking for the giggles. And I turned to the guy and I was like, because that's wellness too.
Absolutely.
Right. And
so that's such a funny thing because you get a lot of that. I want the happy weed. Where's the happy weed?
Yeah. And don't give me that strong stuff. I want the stuff from like 1972. And I'm like, cool, got it. Like we don't need diamond infused, herb crusted, metallic.
On a side note, like that is really changing. I mean, you're still going to have that high potency customer, right? As you would, but you're really seeing a lot of people coming in being like, can I get something in the 25% range? Like they're really learning. Like I don't want the 12% beer. I want the 3% beer. And it's coming like that with weed where it's like there's a market for all of that, which makes me happy for the cultivators because how many cultivators don't get to sell their weed because it's not some crazy testing point
strain, whatever.
Yeah, and it's like, but it's such good medicine and it's good and it smokes good. And they're like, but it's only 19%. And I'm like, well, there's becoming that customer is starting to come. So those types of things are going to flourish. I'm happy to see
That's
it.
why I do like the different kinds of like CBD. Like I love what Emerald Spirit is doing with there. I know you guys highlighted, you know, them with the awards and having different things, because I'm so used to being around stoners. Like everybody smoked, everybody gets high, and it's just like the normal thing. But I also am like meeting lots of people, like people my age, people younger, being like, I can't even handle it. And so I've been like, okay, I was like, come into my shop, you know, like I'll hook you up, like I'll show you. But I think there's a lot of people out there that don't even know that exist. Still too, and it's.
But that's because we don't have research, right? Like in some ways, I'm not sure what other product that we put into our bodies, right? Whether it's something we eat or we drink or whatever, that hasn't been researched and like we're still so new. Yeah. And like cannabis has been around forever. And I, of course there was a community and in a lot of ways an industry pre-64. But I think what legalization did is it sort of reset the clock a little bit. And we're in the infancy. We are in the infancy of what is to come. Right. And so I think we just don't have enough information yet. And so to your point, like people are finally starting to learn their bodies because they're having to just experiment, because we don't have the information that any other industry would have around how our bodies interact with something. And obviously that's more complicated because all of our bodies react differently, but we don't even really have those tools yet beyond sort of trial and error and anecdote and consultation, right? Because this has been so stifled for so long. And I think in some ways, full circle moment here, I think that's in some ways what we're trying to do with the fair is like open up that conversation with different people and have that conversation differently. You know, the awards, having the cannabis awards be both like scientific, right? In terms of lab testing and right. And also have this human judging element is I think an effort to really honor that truth, like that we don't have enough of one and we need and also a big part of the experience of this plant is the other is the the communal and so I think that, you know, I was thrilled to see the outcome of that, because that is really an objective mechanism for looking at the plant, and we were able to see a lot of folks celebrated that came from the Triangle, that, you know, aren't the hype strains, that don't have the massive marketing budgets. So like a lot of the things that help a brand win in the market are sort of opposite that. So it was great. I was so thrilled to be able to see that platform and that stage really for folks who, you know, otherwise struggle in the market.
It's a long run. To do that is a really long run, to have something different, to have something that people don't know about, but it's that long game. Like I really hope, you know, it is going to pay off in the long run, because it's just growing as it is. But the way that like this or the regulations are, it just favors the big business model. And so that's can be a little bit more difficult for those people and for those smaller farmers out there that are just holding on and like doing something that really benefits people.
I know a lot of small farmers that they do that, but they also work jobs, you know,
they've had to pivot.
They've had to do both to stay alive, but they're willing to stay alive because they know if they outlast it, that it will be there for them. And I think that's telling when you look at alcohol prohibition. You know, it's kind of the big breweries took over, right? And then somewhere along the way in the 70s, it was like, people were like, oh, you know, we want to start home brews started, right? And people started making fun beers. And then that turned into places like Sierra Nevada. You know, they've been around since 1970 and now they probably outpace a lot of the major breweries on, you know, per capita of their size of their company, everything. I think they're outpacing the big guys. I mean, more people know about Sierra Nevada nowadays than ever before. And for me, it's just like, oh, this is just this little brewery, you know, but when I was traveling across country, when I was telling you about earlier, I mean, I'd see it everywhere. And I'm like, weird, you know, but it's cool to see it. It gives me a lot of hope for the future of cannabis, that it will balance out. But I think in a way, and this is maybe not people's favorite thing to hear from me, but I think you need those kind of gigantic people to like push a little bit, because us small people can't do the kind of pushing that they can do, right? They have things and access to things that we just don't.
And resources. And I don't just mean financial.
And you know that with what your parents do, you know what I mean?
100%.
Like there's a levels to things, and some of us small people just, we're not there, you know?
I think we were talking earlier about this legislative victory and in what is effectively kind of, it is a tax reduction technically, but it was effectively a freeze. And I was saying two things can be true at the same time.
That's right.
Right. And so this was, I don't think, I've heard a lot of people in industry dismiss this already, right? Like, and I totally get it because I could not agree more that taxing a product at 40, if the hemp market has showed us anything, it's that without sort of disproportionate taxation and disproportionate regulation,
it would be crazy.
This market, the market potential is wild.
Yeah.
And so I remember standing in a legislative summit about a year and a half ago, and I set up my little table, and I had the DCC regulations for cannabis printed out, right? And then I had none for hemp.
Yeah.
Right? And I had a receipt from our shop printed out, and then I had one from a smoke shop with this was pre-emergency ban, right? Although, let's be honest, the hemp products were still in smoke shops post-emergency ban, but right, like that just had sales tax, but didn't have local tax, excise tax, right? Like didn't have all of those things. And so the conversation that as legislators were coming through and staff that I was having was, there is a story to be told here. Mm-hmm. And I'm certainly not advocating that the story is no regulation and no taxation.
Right.
But what this demonstrates is how disproportionately, how we've so over-indexed into those things here. And we need to get to a place over time where we come into the middle for both, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think this, said differently, tangent alert, 15% is not sustainable because having compounding taxes and fees, bringing the price of legal cannabis to 40+% above, and that's just in taxes. That's not also looking at market dynamics, right?
Yes.
And so like continuing to have legal cannabis be, 2 to 3x the price of illegal cannabis, that doesn't make sense for the state. That doesn't, right? Like this isn't about us, to your point. That's a consumer tax, right?
Yeah.
That just doesn't make any sense even from a policy perspective.
Totally.
So we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
And also the fact that we were able to do this is incredible. And I don't think enough people were close enough to the ground. And so it's really easy to criticize that. Mm-hmm. But there were multiple points this year where this was dead.
Yeah.
Right. Like where this thing that for us, it's so obviously needed. But the reality is it was, politically it was dead.
I didn't hear anything in August. I mean, for a while there in August, because the thing passed in July, right? And it was like, we heard a lot about it. And then August kind of happened and I didn't hear anything about it because I stay really close to all that. And then it was like, literally a week ago or 2 weeks ago now, it's like the news like broke through normal and everybody was like, oh my God, like this has happened, and it was like, God, I thought that it was dead. I thought we were just like, it was just going to go
and it
go
was
into the
work,
abyss.
though. During those 2 months that you thought it was quiet, it was
a lot of work.
Dozens and dozens and dozens of regulatory meetings.
Did you have to keep pushing it through? And the opposition, it was really hard. It was people like, hey, I need this for my community. And we're like, we want to give you more, actually. Like, we want to be able to fix this so that this doesn't dry up and that you don't have anything. And
it is drying up. Mm-hmm. It's not even so it doesn't dry up. This is one of the things that frustrated me the most because, this excise tax revenue benefits vital programs, youth programs and in our communities. Yeah. And talk about a year when putting like this, there couldn't be a worse year because federally, everybody's funds are drying up. Everybody was getting fired. Every day is a different day with different news, right? So these poor nonprofits and community service oriented groups, they're already facing devastation. And so they hear of this tax freeze and immediately it's like, not again. We can't keep taking these hits after hits after hits. But the thing that was really frustrating is the numbers, numbers are objective, right? And that's the beautiful thing about them is we don't have to ascribe our feelings. They're just factual. And the facts were very clear that because cannabis is taxed so high, sales are going down. Right. And as those sales go down, excise tax collection, as revenue goes down, excise tax collection on that revenue goes down, right?
I agree.
And so this conversation that was, it's cannabis versus kids, it couldn't be further from the truth. We're sitting on the same side of the table saying we have to be fighting with government saying we need a more functional system to protect this revenue for them. Yeah. So, it sucks really that we had to fight that hard. It sucks because we're going to have to keep fighting harder and harder and harder because that was just the beginning. And also a big part of the reason why we played such a large role, Embarc, we're on the board of 2 different trade associations in California. I can't tell you how many legislative meetings I had this past session on this, you know, like opening up my books, like getting down into the details with legislators. But I think to your point, we did that because at the end of the day, you know, I am not a one person team or a 3-person team.
Yeah.
And so I do feel an obligation. This is for our consumers and for the community, right? This is for the protection of our ecosystem and our supply chain, but also, you know, we need to play our part because we are one of the larger operators.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And that's it is what it is. Like I don't disagree with it. And I think that it shows with somebody like yourself who is a large operator. And like we said, probably people don't know who you are at all. Right. So welcome to Lauren. And all the really cool things she's doing, but also like you are a big player. And so I'm sure you get some people looking at you thinking that you're this corporation and that you're this and that you're that. And then it's like, but really actually I'm not. And you need people like me that are good people that are going to run big business, because big business is it's just a part of the ecosystem. Like you're going to have it, and I would much rather have people like you running those businesses than some of the other people that we've dealt with in the industry. You know, I'm not going to mention any names, but there's people in the industry that I'm just like, I don't agree with you being a part of it because your entire life has been around the opposite of this plant, and it just drives me nuts that you now get to have a role where people like yourself I'd much rather have over any day of the week because of that. You know, sorry, I smoked a little weed, so now I'm like rambling.
Thank you.
But yeah, I think but more people like you need to come forward and be able to let people know that there are good people that are doing big business, but they're also for the people and for the industry and really want to see it be successful.
Or we're all going to die trying, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that like our industry is still really young and we don't need to be competitive like this. Retail dies if retail dies. I want you to be successful. I want you to be successful. And not just because like girl power, right? But like, because if it like, of course we would never be, but if there was only one retailer and everybody else was going out of business, government would not let us all do this grand experiment. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think that we sometimes get a little ahead of ourselves in this space, and I get it. It's because it's so competitive. It is so dog eat dog, and it's so exhausting.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Yeah,
and
it feels 5 years feels like a long time.
Yes, and so I think people are really operating from this place of burnout, and myself included sometimes, right? But I think it's so short-sighted because it's getting in the way of us uplifting each other and doing the work to support all of us succeeding.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's an unnecessary competitiveness with everybody in the industry. And I think that also comes a little bit from the culture of cannabis, you know, and cannabis awards and stuff. That stuff's been going on, that dog-eat-dog kind of, I feel like that kind of comes into the cannabis because of that. Like there's this competition, even though it should just be friendly and we should all just be working. And it's just a fun time. You know, you won this time, I'm going to win next time, you know, and instead of it being like, I don't want to see you be in business anymore. Like that's where I'm like, we're too young, you guys. Like we're only in California. You can't even sell your product in the other state. If I opened a water bottle company right now, I could be globally shipping $5 water bottles on TikTok Shop, making stupid money.
I know. Don't remind me.
You are literally selling in the Sacramento area. Yeah. Like how small of a customer base is that? And I think that's also why it's so hard, is that it's a really small customer base. You still have people today that are afraid to even try cannabis, and they're still really nervous about it. And it really comes from the federally legalization, because they're like, well, if the feds haven't legalized it, is it still safe? Is it not safe?
And they've been told a story. And we've been told a story
that reefer madness
for decades.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I think we launched this kind of fun collab called Devil's Lettuce, and we really went back and forth on that because we do operate in conservative communities, and so we've gotten feedback around that. Trust me, I've gotten a lot of feedback around that. But the whole point of it, we actually created an entire website that really started to tell the story, because I think a lot of people don't even realize the ways in which their preconceived notions were informed by that. Right. Yeah. By what their parents told them or their schools told them. And by the way, we should be telling kids not to do drugs. Generally, I would like to see kids not engage in right. But also there's a new way to do these things. There's new ways to have these
kids energy drinks. I'm like, what are you? I'm like, do not give your kids that level of caffeine.
Are you kidding me?
That's a very intense stimulant. That's a real drug. I understand they sell it at the corner store, but that's a real thing.
I know.
So I don't want kids doing anything
that, no. The longer that we can prolong little brain development.
That- oh, yeah.
Is great. I think this is generally a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
You heard it here first.
Give him
We're
a
generally
chance.
supportive.
You got to give him a fighting chance.
Yeah, life is hard. Life is much harder than when we were kids, okay?
Yeah, it's such a different landscape for sure. Well, let's see. I wrote down some questions in case we got off topic. You got to get going. Okay. Well, Lauren, it has been a fantastic conversation with you, and we're going to have you back on the show in a couple of years and see where you've gone. But if anybody wants to get in touch with you, is there any way that they can email you or anything? Or
Yes.
if you don't want to give that out?
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm Lauren at goembarc.com.
Perfect. And no Instagrams or anything, right?
I'm a ghost.
You
Okay.
are really good at LinkedIn, actually.
Oh,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so LinkedIn.
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Lauren Carpenter. I don't know what my thing is, but search me.
Perfect. I think it's just your name.
Great.
So, but it's been really a wonderful conversation, and thank you so much. And I want to say thank you to all the listeners that have made it to the end of the show. And you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, podcast, and Spotify. And give us a comment and a review. It really helps us grow the channel. And you guys all have a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.